Street Fighter 6 announcement is probably going to happen in about a week. And since Capcom has nailed so few of their game launches, I wanted to discuss stuff that they need to avoid. The last time we had a great Street Fighter launch like from Capcom, or a great fighting game launch from Capcom, was back in 2009. More than a decade ago. They've got to do better. They've got to be better. We need something high impact from the start, right out of the gate. I want to see Street Fighter 6 having stuff like Guilty Gear Strive's Combo Maker, Tekken 7's Punishment Training, NetherRealm Studios' commitment to exceptional single-player content, among other things. Like, this has to be what Capcom is hitting for a base-level bar. Street Fighter 6 needs to avoid these 5 major issues at launch. I want to talk about it, but first, before we get into it, if everyone watching this can cycle crush the like button, it helps out our channel a ton and will enable us to do more in the future. Legitimately, we're going to do more with this if you guys can punch the like button.
And while you're doing that, you might as well subscribe. It's like a half of a cyber inch away, depending on what screen you're using. So please, and thank you.
Half of a cyber inch sounds really graphic. So, all right, John, let's get into it. Yeah. Street Fighter 6 announcement is probably going to happen in about a week. And since Capcom has nailed so few of their game launches, I wanted to discuss stuff that they need to avoid. Starting with number 1, not learning from your competition. This is the golden era of fighting games, far better than any other time I can remember. Even the early to mid 90s, when everyone released a fighting game, like everyone, the sales and the quality of the games has never been better than it is right now. And that's because we see some killer stuff out there collectively by the developers who make these titles. They are doing awesome and amazing things. You've got to learn from that. And with that, I want to see Street Fighter 6 having stuff like Guilty Gear Strive's Combo Maker, Tekken 7's Punishment Training, NetherRealm Studios' commitment to exceptional single-player content, among other things. Like, this has to be what Capcom is hitting for a base-level bar. Not just like, oh yeah, we're going to have this in there. The last time we had a great Street Fighter launch like from Capcom, or a great fighting game launch from Capcom, was back in 2009, more than a decade ago. They've got to do better. They've got to be better. We need something high impact from the start, right out of the gate.
Oh my gosh, it's become commonplace, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to spoil number 2, but I know what number 2 is going to be from you, and I'm going to tell the people right now. It's got to be have the X-Men characters.
not quite actually, but but continuing off this, one of the things I will say is with Smash Ultimate leading the way here with a gigantic launch roster, the Capcom also needs to give people their money's worth. That is on the same token of what you were just talking about. This should be the end of an era where it's okay to launch with 16 characters for a AAA fighting game. That needs to not happen. It needs to be about 20 or more is a new standard, preferably more like 25. We all know these games are going to have a long life with DLC. That's extremely expected. So don't give us crap for the initial $60 or $70 purchase. Don't make it feel lackluster. Make that freaking be impactful. And this is, again, Capcom has to learn from their mistakes. It's going to just piss me off, and I'm going to write a very nasty review about their game if they do not freaking do this stuff. And I'm hopefully they're expecting it as well. But there it is. So number two is actually console exclusivity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Capcom recently came out and said the PC would be their number 1 platform going forward for their games. That's great. But it was a huge mistake to limit Street Fighter V to a single console. This likely cut the millions in sales they would have gotten down. Like, they probably would have gotten extra like 2 or 3 million of sales. So right now they're at 6 million. They're looking at like 8 or 9 million instead. Just so many more people playing their game if they enabled it on Xbox and Nintendo consoles. And the one thing they got right with it was like making stuff fully crossplay, compatible between, PS5 players and PC players.
Mm-hmm.
But limiting gamers' choices to one console stinks, especially with this type of genre. This is not the type of genre that you want to do that. You should not have to spend hundreds of dollars more because you picked a console randomly that you wanted to play on that Capcom didn't randomly agree with. They're like, oh yeah, now you have to spend hundreds of bucks more. Get wrecked. That is one of the dumbest things you can do to this community. It is a horrible thing. And if Capcom does more exclusive console deals, I don't care if it's Microsoft, I don't care if it's Sony or Nintendo. No. Don't do it again. This was awful. It really hurt your game and your esports efforts and what you're trying to do overall. We never want to see this again.
Two things about that. They just recently updated, Capcom this is, updated their Platinum titles page, and Street Fighter V is at 6.1 million units sold. That's not bad. It's number 9 overall in all of the Capcom releases ever. If they got another 3 mil, that would, for our fantasy purposes, put them up in tying with the likes of Resident Evil's 5 and 6, which both have 8.1 mil. And it would take them from, I think, they're 9th right now. It'd go to like tied for 4th, 5th, which would be a huge increase. So it's not to say that, of course, they would have gotten another 3 mil, but that's something to consider. Like to the degree that John knows what he's talking about, that's a big deal. And I think that John knows a lot about what he's talking about. And then and then I totally forgot the other thing that I was gonna say. So I suppose we can skip on, and if I remember it, I'll let you know.
All right, sounds great. Number 3, best in class netcode. There are a lot of reasons Street Fighter V's netcode isn't well thought of, but one of the biggest problems with it is the perception of how good or bad the code is, along with it being heavily played initially on the PlayStation 4. Capcom needs to launch their next game, Street Fighter 6, with the best netcode around, and on top of that, they need to put some marketing muscle behind it, explaining to players how good it is this time around. They need to show people tangible proof of like, hey, we worked really hard on this. This is a great netcode, and this is how it works. This is what it does. Shoutouts to Project L. They already went and did that with like a 2-minute video.
Yep.
They're like, hey, this is how it works. This is what it does. Capcom, you can put together a 2-minute video as well.
This is how it works. This is how it does, and this is how we want people to talk about it when they go onto Twitter and onto social media, because half the battle and maybe more of the battle is not the actual numbers when it, however you quantify the netcode, the up and download, whatever it is, but it's how people perceive it, it's how they talk about it, and therefore how much they're willing to engage with it, how much they're willing to have patience with it. When something happens, are they going to default over to, oh, it's because of the netcode, or oh, it might be because of something else? How much of a leash are they going to give to you? Capcom needs to invest in like an entire division or department that just goes into talking about how people perceive their game. I think that's called marketing.
Yeah, it's called marketing and having people in place to talk about your game, which thank goodness they actually have hired some people to do that now.
Social media manager, yeah, I guess they've been doing that. So yeah,
thank goodness. It's about freaking time. And just enable and empower these people to talk about your stuff. Put in a 2-minute clip in your launch videos about how good the netcode is. Explain it to people. This is not that hard, Capcom. All right, number 4. Launch it when it's done. Speaking of doing good work, don't launch the damn game until it's been done properly. Yeah, I just mentioned before, Street Fighter 4 was the last game they did properly, 2009, over a decade ago, that they actually put a quality fighting game out there that did not suck. The good news is this is actually why Street Fighter 6 got delayed initially. The game was not received well, and Capcom realized it needed more time to bake in the oven. There's a lot behind this, including Yoshinori Ono, who's not having a great podcast this session.
Check out our previous episode to hear us talk more trash about Ono.
Yeah. But his departure is the reason that we got another season of Street Fighter V, and more development time for Street Fighter 6, along with COVID and other stuff, not just laying at the feet of Ono, but hey, that's out there. But Capcom has also updated their messaging to their investors, and they've said, look, we expect our games to launch with higher scores on like Metacritic and other things, and they actually went back and talked about Street Fighter V getting updated review scores for Arcade Edition and Champion Edition that they were very proud of, and they're like, but we don't want to have a bad launch from the start here, and they've had nothing but bad launches for like the last 11-12 years or something, and it's just
in their fighting game department. In their fighting game
department. So they figured it out, Monster Hunter and Devil May Cry and Resident Evil, all that stuff, shouts to them, but their fighting game division, oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. So they can't do that again. It doesn't look like they're going to do it again, but since that hasn't happened in over 10 years, I'm a little skeptical. I kind of want to see some proof of it first.
And we've seen, like you're kind of laying out here, we've seen them kind of attend to a lot of the issues, or show that they are attending to those issues that have popped up in the past. Capcom, as much as we give it crap about like, oh man, they're stuck in the conservative past of ways of doing things, and then they need to get with the times and such. It's like, that's pretty damn true. But I think they also do eventually do it, and they've done it in a way that's graceful enough that it's Capcom we're talking about. I'm looking at their platinum titles page, and I'm seeing, Resident Evil and Street Fighter and Monster Hunter and all these amazing franchises with millions and millions of units sold. It's like Capcom knows what they're doing to an extent, guys. And I'm in guys. I'm part of that group too. But I do have a certain amount of optimism that they have figured out the change. Now they'll get stuck in whatever chapter we're in right now for the next 20 years, and when it evolves again, we'll be stuck doing this stuff when we should be doing something else. I fully expect that. But for now, I think maybe they've made the adjustment. And also, I remember what I was going to say earlier in regards to the crossplay thing. It kind of goes hand in hand with this. I think they've learned on that front too, and I think that was probably more an error of circumstance and of the times and of the financial situation, and the fact that at that time crossplay was not nearly as important or thought about or even considered like it is today. I'm pretty faithful, and please don't make me eat my words, Capcom, that they will not do that again. I don't think they're aiming to do that again. I think the only reason they would do that is because they had no other choice, and I don't think that's the situation now. Back to you.
When have developers, John, ever said in fighting games that they haven't added a feature or something the community badly wants because it was too hard? When has that ever happened, John?
I don't know. I think Dragon Ball did it about rollback.
Pretty much every developer ever has said like, "Oh yeah, we didn't do this because it was too hard." So it's like, oh my gosh, it's like, okay, guys, at a certain point, you do realize you're talking to your fans who pay you money for this stuff. So,
I mean, they'll just go and make a whole brand new Marvel vs. Capcom 3 if it's too hard for you or whatever it is. So, but let's hope it doesn't come to that.
Yep. Speaking of communicating with their fans, the biggest thing, number 5 at least on our list here, John, is freaking communicate. Actually, just communicate, but I'm going to add the freaking on there because of Dr. Evil. John, would you say it's a good idea to bill your product as a service, and Surface maybe too, but a service, and then go radio silent for large portions of time because you can't figure out what's going on? Yeah, that happened. And it wasn't even that long ago that it happened. And there are all sorts of reasons why. But it should just be inexcusable for a company of Capcom's size and resources to ever have this happen again. Communicate with your fans because it doesn't take a lot to do so. And look, a big shout outs again to the Street Fighter V developers who do the winter, spring, and summer and fall updates. Those are perfect. Those are exactly what we need. But it's also Capcom, and we always talk about them taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So you think something like this, John, like communication, it's a given. Oh, they're not going to go radio silent for half of a year again or whatever and other stuff. And then you go, well, it's Capcom.
I've written so many articles about it that if they do it again, then my existence is useless. So I choose to believe, like I said, that we are in the 2 steps forward phase of the pattern process, and that yes, eventually we'll have another step back, but maybe, just maybe, as Street Fighter 6 launches, it can be part of the 2 steps forward process. And despite all of your efforts today, I'm trying to be optimistic that is the case.
John, we're only about a week away potentially for a Street Fighter 6 announcement or whatever.
I promised myself I wouldn't cry today.
Yeah, no possible way this could go wrong, right? This video, we're not going to look at this video and go, oh crap, kind of thing.
Ain't nothing terrible going to happen today. And then you see Capcom playing with machetes.
All right, y'all. We put out this video and stuff in hopes that Capcom sees this and goes, oh, we forgot to communicate. Let's go ahead and figure that out and other things.
Also, Capcom, please accept this as our official request to join the Capcom content creators. If we could be part of that team, please, that'd be great.
Yeah, there you go.